The persimmons were too perfect in my hands, their skin unnaturally smooth, like my fake identity, beautiful until someone looked too closely. I pressed my thumb against the orange flesh, searching for the bruise I knew had to be hiding underneath. Namdimun Market buzzed around me with its usual chaos. Ajumas haggling over produce, the sizzle of hadiak on griddles, the thick smell of fermented soybeans cutting through humid Seoul air. I was just another Omega running errands, invisible in my faded jeans and the suppressant patch burning beneath my sleeve. Normal. Forgettable. Safe. Then the crowd shifted. A black Genesis GV80 glided into the narrow street, parting the sea of shoppers like a knife through silk. My heart stopped. The windows were tinted, but I didn't need to see inside to know. Alphas like that didn't come to places like this. I was an Omega living off the grid, working overnight shifts at a 24-hour convenience store, surviving on black market suppressants and the desperate hope that he'd never find us. 5 years I'd hidden the secret that could destroy everything. My son was the heir to Korea's most dangerous alpha. Appa, look. Junseo's small hand slipped from mine. Time fractured. My 4-year-old son ran directly into a man in an immaculate black suit. The man's nostrils flared, catching the faint, distorted scent beneath my cheap suppressants. His dark eyes dropped to the child, those unmistakable golden-flecked eyes, then slowly rose to meet my face. Seo Jaehwan smiled. Hello, my Omega. 5 years evaporated in 3 words. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers and tell me where you're watching from. The elevator didn't have buttons for the top 3 floors. Jaehwan pressed his palm to a scanner, and I felt the ascent in my stomach, or maybe that was just the terror. Junseo was quiet against my chest, his small fingers twisted in my shirt. He didn't cry when the men in black suits had guided us into the car. He'd learned early that silence kept us safe. I should have taught him to scream. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. Not a hallway, not a lobby, just straight into a space so vast and wide it hurt to look at. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 sides, Seoul sprawling beneath us like a kingdom made of light. The Han River cut through the city, reflecting the sunset in molten gold. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I hated it immediately. The child's room is already prepared, Jaehwan said, his hand pressing against the small of my back. The touch burned through my shirt like a brand. Second door on the left. You'll find everything he needs. How? My voice came out strangled. You found us 2 hours ago. His smile was glacial. I've had this ready for 5 years, Maru. I always knew I'd bring you home eventually. 5 years. He'd been waiting 5 years with a nursery prepared in his fortress, so certain of his claim that he'd kept a room empty for a child he'd never met. The thought made my suppressant patch itch beneath my sleeve, the adhesive suddenly too tight against my skin. Junseo squirmed in my arms. Appa, I need to pee. I'll show you. I moved toward the hallway, but Jaehwan's hand tightened on my waist. The doors are biometric, he said softly. Keyed to my palm print, and yours as of 20 minutes ago. The windows don't open. The elevator requires authorization. His breath ghosted against my ear. In case you were wondering about your options. I wasn't wondering. I'd stopped having options the moment Junseo ran into him at the market. The bathroom attached to Junseo's new room was bigger than our entire apartment in Nowon-gu. Marble floors, a tub that could fit 3 people, and a small toilet clearly installed just for a child. While Junseo used it, I stared at the room that had been waiting for my son. A bed shaped like a race car. Shelves already filled with toys still in their packaging. A closet full of clothes in sizes ranging from toddler to preteen, as if Jaehwan had been buying them year after year, updating the collection as he imagined our son growing up without him. The rage hit me so suddenly I had to grip the doorframe. How dare he? How dare he play the devoted father when I'd fled because... Appa, why is everything so big? I looked down at Junseo, his dark eyes wide as he took in the room. My son, who'd shared a sleeping mat with me in a studio apartment where cockroaches crawled across the walls. My son, who'd never owned a toy that wasn't from a convenience store clearance bin. It's temporary, I whispered. Liar. Jaehwan's voice came from the doorway. I spun around, instinctively putting myself between him and Junseo. The alpha's eyes tracked the movement, something dark and pleased flickering across his face. Still so protective. I wondered if motherhood would have dulled your instincts. Don't. My hands were shaking. Don't come near him. He's my son, Omega. Jaehwan stepped into the room, and the space suddenly felt suffocating despite its size. I have every right to come near him. In fact, he crouched down to Junseo's level, and I wanted to scream. I plan to come near him every single day for the rest of his life. Isn't that right, Junseo? My son looked between us, confused. Are you my real Appa? The question punched the air from my lungs. Jaewon's smile was savage. Yes, he said simply. Your real Appa. The one your mother tried very hard to keep you from. He stood, his hand extending toward me. Miru, your patches. I took a step back. No, that wasn't a request. His voice dropped into that tone, the one that made every Omega instinct in my body scream submission. You're in my home now, under my protection. You don't need to hide your scent behind chemicals anymore. I need them. My hand went to my sleeve, covering the patch like I could protect it. You don't understand, I need. He moved faster than I could track. One moment he was across the room. The next his fingers were on my wrist, gentle but immovable. He pushed up my sleeve, exposing the patch stuck to my inner arm. The adhesive had left my skin red and irritated after years of constant use. Look at this, he murmured, his thumb brushing the inflamed skin. You've been poisoning yourself. For what? To hide from me? He peeled the patch off in one smooth motion. I gasped at the sudden exposure, feeling my scent start to bloom in the air, distorted from years of suppressants, but unmistakably Omega. Unmistakably his. Jaehwan pulled a lighter from his pocket. The flame caught the patch, and I watched it curl and blacken in his palm until he dropped the burning remnant into a nearby waste bin. You won't need these anymore, he said, his eyes locked on mine. The gold flecks seemed to glow in the dimming light. Not here. Not with me. My knees wanted to buckle. Without the suppressants, the mating bond I'd been dampening for 5 years suddenly roared to life. A phantom chain connecting my chest to his, pulling tight. I hate you, I whispered. I know, Jaehwan said. He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating tenderness. But you're home now, Omega. Both of you. And this time, I'm never letting you leave. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered like a jeweled prison, beautiful and utterly inescapable. The documents arrived on the third morning. I was watching Junseo eat breakfast. Actual breakfast, not convenience store kimbap. When Jaewon's assistant placed a manila folder on the glass table between us. The woman's scent was neutral, beta, carefully professional as she bowed and retreated without a word. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. Eat, Jaehwan said to Junseo, his voice warm in a way that made my skin crawl. How easily he slipped into the role of father, like he'd been practicing for years. Appa needs to talk to your other Appa for a moment. Other Appa. The casual possessiveness of it made my teeth grind. Junseo nodded, shoveling rice into his mouth with the single-minded focus of a 4-year-old who'd discovered food could taste like something other than survival. I followed Jaehwan to his office, my bare feet silent on the heated floors. I hadn't been given shoes. Hadn't been given much of anything except a closet full of expensive clothes that fit perfectly and made me want to burn them all. The office was all dark wood and leather, windows overlooking the city like a throne room. Jaehwan sat behind his desk and opened an identical folder. He didn't invite me to sit. Kim Juno, he read aloud, his voice empty of inflection. Beta, born 1994 in Busan. Deceased in a traffic accident 3 months before my son was born. He looked up at me, and his eyes were black ice. Very thorough. The death certificate is even real. Whose idea was it? The shelter's. My silence was answer enough. They coached you well. He pulled out Junseo's birth certificate, the document I'd paid a forger in Itaewon $3,000 for. My hands had shaken so badly when I signed it that the nurse had asked if I was all right. Father, Kim Juno. A dead beta who conveniently can't dispute paternity. Mother, Hanmiru Omega unregistered. His finger traced the line. No mention of a mate bond. No mention of me. There was no bond to mention, I said. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. I severed it before I left. The folder slammed shut. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot, and I flinched despite myself. Jaehwan stood slowly, his control so absolute it was more terrifying than rage would have been. You tried to sever it, he corrected. But bond severance is a medical procedure, Maru. It requires a licensed physician, hormone therapy, months of psychological evaluation. It leaves records. He moved around the desk, each step deliberate. I checked every Omega clinic in Seoul, every underground facility, every back alley butcher who'd attempt it for cash. You weren't in any of them, because I'd been too poor to afford a real severance. Because I'd simply stopped taking my heat suppressants and started loading my body with bond-dampening chemicals, hoping the connection would wither from neglect. Because I'd been desperate and 22 and so fucking terrified. I tried, I whispered. I know. He was close enough now that I could smell him. Cedar and gunpowder and something darker. Something that made my omega hindbrain keen with recognition. I felt it. Every day for 5 years, I felt you trying to kill our bond. Like ripping out stitches one by one. His hand came up to my chest, pressing against my sternum where the bond lived like a second heartbeat. But it's still here, isn't it? Wounded. Infected. But alive. I couldn't breathe. The bond pulsed under his palm, responding to his proximity like a flower turning toward the sun. Traitor biology. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize my own blood? His other hand fisted in the documents, and I heard paper tearing. My own mate. He ripped the birth certificate in half, then quarters, letting the pieces fall like snow between us. Kim Juno. A fiction. A dead man's name on my living son's papers. He was safer as a beta's child, I said. My eyes burned, but I refused to let the tears fall. Safer as anyone's child but yours. Safer. Jaewon's laugh was caustic. You were living in Noongu, Maru. In a building with broken locks and mold in the walls. You were working overnight shifts in a convenience store where robberies happened twice a month. You were buying black market suppressants that were destroying your endocrine system. He grabbed my wrist, pulling it between us. The skin where he'd removed my patch 3 days ago was still red, angry. This is what you call safe. Safer than being hunted by your enemies. The words exploded out of me. Safer than being used as leverage against you. Safer than watching him grow up thinking violence is love, because that's all you know how to give. The slap would have been kinder than the stillness that followed. Jaewon's jaw worked, and for a moment I saw past the alpha dominance to something rawer underneath. I searched for you for 5 years, he said quietly. I tore this city apart looking for you. I had men checking every Omega shelter, every clinic, every cheap apartment in every district. I bribed hospital staff. I hacked medical databases. I followed every false lead, every dead end. His grip on my wrist tightened. Do you know what I found? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Nothing. You disappeared like smoke. And every night I went to bed feeling our bond fraying, knowing you were out there somewhere, suffering, and I couldn't reach you. His forehead pressed against mine, and the intimacy of it was devastating. You took my child and you erased yourself from existence. You made me think I'd lost you both. You never had us to lose, I whispered. Liar. His breath was hot against my lips. You're still lying even now. I can feel your heart racing. I can smell the truth beneath your words. His hand slid from my wrist to my stomach, pressing against the place where I'd carried our son. Did you really think a piece of paper could unmake what we created? That I wouldn't know him the moment I saw him? The tears came then, hot and shameful. I wanted him to have a choice. I wanted him to be free. He's my heir, Jaewon said, and there was finality in it like a closing tomb. He was never going to be free. Neither were you. He released me, turning back to his desk where more documents waited. These are the corrected papers. Seo Junseo. Father, Seo Jaehwan. Mother, Han Miru. Registered bondmates as of 5 years ago. We're not. We are. He signed the documents with swift, brutal strokes. We've always been. And now the law will reflect it. Outside, souls stretched endlessly in every direction, and I'd never felt more trapped in my life. The boutique didn't have a name on the door, just a small brass plaque with a phone number for appointments. Jaewon's hand stayed locked on my elbow as we walked in, Junseo's small fingers clutching his other hand. My son had stopped flinching away from him yesterday. I'd noticed and said nothing, watching the distance between them shrink with each passing hour like watching a trap close in slow motion. Mr. Seo. The woman who greeted us was elegant, her suit probably worth more than I'd earned in a year at the convenience store. Her eyes skated over me, Omega, unregistered, clearly out of place, before settling on Junseo with professional warmth. We have the private viewing room prepared. Private viewing room. Because of course they did. Because men like Jaehwan didn't shop alongside normal people. The room beyond was obscene. 3 walls of shelves displaying toys like museum pieces. Wooden trains from Germany, hand-painted figurines from France, plush animals so pristine they looked like they'd never been touched. The 4th wall was entirely glass, overlooking Gangnam's shopping district from the 10th floor. Everything gleamed. Everything was perfect. Junseo's mouth fell open. Pick anything you want, Jaehwan said, releasing his hand. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it, and something in my chest twisted painfully. Everything you want. It's all yours. My son looked back at me, uncertainty flickering across his face. For years of "we can't afford that, and maybe next time" had taught him not to want. I'd been so proud of that, how he never begged for toys in stores, how he understood without being told that we had to be careful. Now I watched that careful restraint war with childish desire, and I hated myself for ever making him learn it. Go ahead, I heard myself say. The words tasted like betrayal. Juncio moved like he was afraid the dream would shatter. He reached for a stuffed lion first, hugging it to his chest. Then a set of building blocks. Then a remote-controlled car that probably cost more than our deposit on the apartment we'd never return to. The woman followed him with a tablet, noting each item with swift taps of her manicured fingers. The lion is hand-stitched by a toy maker in Lion, she said to Jaehwan, not me. Never me. Each one is unique. And the blocks are sustainable teak, completely non-toxic. I'll take 10 of each, Jaehwan said without looking at the prices. Different colors for the lion. And add the complete vehicle collection. Juncio gasped. All of them. All of them. Jaehwan crouched down, his suit straining across his shoulders. He tucked a strand of hair behind Juncio's ear with devastating gentleness. You're my son. You should have everything. The laugh that burst from Juncio was pure joy, untainted by the weight of everything this meant. He threw his arms around Jaehwan's neck, and I watched my son embrace his father for the first time with real affection instead of confused wariness. The alpha's eyes closed. His large hand came up to cradle the back of Juncio's head, and the expression on his face was so raw it made me look away. This was worse than the penthouse. Worse than the documents. Worse than burning my suppressants. This was my son learning that his father's love came wrapped in luxury, that affection could be bought and measured in zeros on a receipt. This was Juncio discovering that the world I'd built for us, small and poor but ours, had been unnecessary suffering when paradise was waiting if we'd just submitted. Appa, look. Juncio ran to me with a telescope, top of the line, the kind with digital displays and auto-tracking. We can see stars. We don't have a balcony, I said reflexively, then remembered. We didn't have our apartment anymore. We had a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a terrace that wrapped around 3 sides. The roof access is perfect for stargazing, Jaehwan said behind me. His breath ghosted against my neck, and I forced myself not to shiver. I'll have it set up tonight. You're buying him, I whispered, low enough that Juncio couldn't hear. I'm giving him what he deserves. Jaehwan's hand settled on my hip, possessive and warm. What you should have been able to give him if you hadn't run. The barb hit home. I had wanted to give Juncio everything. I'd lain awake on our thin mattress, listening to him breathe, imagining all the things he could have had in a different life. A bigger room. New clothes instead of thrift store finds. Toys that didn't come from the clearance bin. I'd wanted it so desperately it physically hurt. But wanting it from me, earned through honest work, was different from this. He'll have everything I can give him, Jaehwan murmured against my ear, his voice dropping into something darker. Everything you tried to deny him. Every toy. Every opportunity. Every advantage my name and my money can provide. His hand slid from my hip to my stomach, pressing against the place where I'd carried our son in secret. And he'll grow up knowing his real father gave him all of it. Juncio was examining a wooden train set now, his delighted babbling mixing with the woman's patient explanations about craftsmanship and heritage. He looked so happy. So perfectly, heartbreakingly happy in a way I'd never been able to make him. I hate you, I said again, because it was the only truth I had left. I know. Jaehwan's lips brushed my temple, a mockery of tenderness. But watch him, Omega. Watch how easily he blooms when he's not being starved. His hand tightened on my stomach. This is what you stole from him. 5 years of this. The guilt was a living thing, clawing up my throat. Because he was right. Because Juncio was 4 years old and had never owned anything new, had never experienced the simple joy of having whatever he wanted. Because I'd been so focused on keeping him away from Jaehwan's world that I'd never stopped to wonder if my world was enough. Mr. Seo, the woman approached with her tablet. The total comes to. I don't care. He pulled out a black card, the kind with no spending limit. Deliver everything to the penthouse by tonight. And add whatever else you think a 4-year-old boy would enjoy. Price is irrelevant. She bowed, already tapping new items into her order. Juncio ran to us carrying an armful of books, his eyes shining. Appa, can we read these together? Please. He was looking at Jaehwan when he said it. Not me. His real Appa, the one who'd appeared like magic and made all his unspoken wishes come true. Every night, Jaehwan promised, and lifted our son into his arms like he'd done it 1,000 times before. We'll read every single one. I followed them out of the boutique, my hands empty, watching my son's head rest trustingly on his father's shoulder. The trap had closed. I just didn't know yet if I was the only one caught in it. I found him in his office at 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. Hadn't slept properly since we'd been brought here. And the penthouse felt suffocating in the dark. Juncio was safe in his ridiculous race car bed, surrounded by enough toys to stock a store. But I'd still checked on him twice before wandering the halls like a ghost in someone else's life. The light beneath Jaewon's office door was a thin gold line. I should have turned back. Should have returned to the bedroom he'd given me, separate from his own, surprisingly, and pretended I didn't notice how he never seemed to sleep either. Instead, I opened the door. He was standing at the window, a glass of whiskey in one hand, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He didn't turn when I entered, but his shoulders tensed with awareness. Can't sleep? His reflection in the glass was ghostly, hollow-eyed. I'm not used to silence, I said. Our apartment had been thin-walled, full of neighbors' arguments and traffic noise, and the constant hum of a city that never stopped. Here, the soundproofing was so complete it felt like being buried alive. Neither am I. He finally turned, and I saw the exhaustion carved into his face. How long had it been there? Had I just not noticed, or had he hidden it better before? But I stopped trying to sleep years ago. The dreams were worse than insomnia. Something in his voice made me stay instead of retreating. Dreams. Nightmares. He set the glass down and moved to his desk, pulling open a drawer. Do you know what an incomplete bond feels like for an alpha, Maru? When the omega tries to sever it. I didn't answer. Couldn't. It's like drowning, he continued, his voice eerily calm. Like someone's holding your head underwater, and you can feel them struggling on the other end, desperate to breathe, but you can't reach them. You can't help them. You can only feel their panic echoing through your own chest. His hand pressed against his sternum, the same place he'd touched on me, where the bond lived. For 5 years, I felt you drowning. The confession hung in the air between us, too raw to touch. I didn't, my throat closed. I didn't know it would affect you like that. Didn't you? His smile was bitter. Or did you just not care? He pulled out a folder, no folders plural. A stack of them, thick with documents. Come here. I should have refused. Should have turned and walked out. Instead, I crossed to the desk, my bare feet silent on the wood floor. The first folder he opened was full of photographs. Blurry surveillance images of omegas who weren't me, walking through markets, getting on buses, their faces circled in red pen. Rejected. Not her. Try again. That one was from 6 months after you left, Jaehwan said, pointing to a photo of an omega with dark hair and a similar build to mine. I flew to Busan personally. Waited outside her apartment for 3 hours before I got close enough to scent her. His finger moved to another photo. This one was a year later. Taegu. She worked in a convenience store just like you. Same schedule, same height. Wrong scent. Wrong everything. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers and tell me where you're watching from. He flipped through pages of dead ends. Shelter records with names redacted. Hospital admission forms for omegas in crisis, none of them me. Interview transcripts with people who'd maybe seen someone matching my description. Financial records showing payments to informants, investigators, hackers. I checked every omega clinic in the country, he said, his voice flat with exhaustion. Every underground facility that did off-the-books bond severances. I paid doctors to violate confidentiality. I bribed hospital staff. I hacked medical databases that could have gotten me arrested. He pulled out another folder, this one thinner. These are the 3 times I almost found you. The first was dated 2 years ago. A tip about an unregistered omega working night shifts in Nowon-gu. By the time his men arrived, I'd already switched to a different store. The second was last year. A black market suppressant dealer who remembered selling to someone matching my description. But he'd only met me once, and the location I'd given him was false. The third was 3 months ago. Someone had spotted an omega with a young boy at a free clinic. The child had Jaewon's eyes. I missed you by 4 hours, he said softly. 4 fucking hours. I stood in that clinic, and I could still smell traces of you in the air. Distorted by suppressants, but unmistakable. His hand flattened against the page, shaking. Do you know what that did to me? To be that close. I stared at the files, at the evidence of his obsession, and felt something crack in my chest. This wasn't just about possession. This was grief. Raw, consuming grief for something he thought he'd lost. The dream started after the first year, he continued. I'd feel your fear spike through the bond, just flashes, fragments, and I'd wake up gasping, convinced you were hurt. Convinced you were dying and I couldn't reach you. He looked at me then, and his eyes were devastated. Some nights I'd feel pain. Physical pain echoing through the connection. Were you hurt, Muru? Did someone hurt you while you were running from me? The memory came unbidden. Falling down the apartment stairs when I was 7 months pregnant, my ankle twisted, lying there in the dark stairwell trying not to scream because I didn't want anyone to call an ambulance I couldn't afford. I'd felt something then, through the bond one thought I'd killed, a distant roar of rage that wasn't mine. Once, I whispered. I fell. His jaw clenched. I destroyed my office that night. I didn't know why. I just felt. He pressed his fist against his chest. Like someone was tearing me open from the inside. Jae-hwan. 5 years, Miru. He moved closer, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath, the exhaustion in his scent. 5 years I searched for you. 5 years of phantom pain and half-dead bond and dreams where I found you too late. His hand came up to my face, cupping my jaw with a gentleness that felt like violence. And you want to know the worst part? I couldn't speak. I still felt you loving him, he said, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. Our son. Through all of it, through the fear and the pain and the severing attempts, I could feel you loving someone with an intensity that made the bond burn. And I knew, you'd had my child and were raising him alone. His forehead pressed against mine. That's what kept me searching. That love. Knowing you were capable of it, even if you'd never give it to me. The tears came hot and fast. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. His other hand found my waist, holding me in place. You were terrified of me, of what I am. So you ran. And his voice broke. I let you go once. I won't make that mistake again. Outside, Seoul was beginning to wake, the first hints of dawn touching the horizon. Inside, I was falling into the gravity of a bond I'd tried so hard to kill, pulled toward an alpha who'd spent 5 years bleeding for me in ways I'd never known. The summons came during breakfast. One of Jae-won's men, I'd learned his name was Kong, appeared beside the table where I was helping Junseo cut his pancakes and said simply, Mr. Seo requests your presence in his office. Not asks. Requests. As if I had a choice. Junseo looked up with syrup on his chin. Is Appa okay? He's fine, I lied, wiping his face with a napkin. Eat your breakfast. I'll be back soon. Kong escorted me like I might run. Maybe I would have if there was anywhere to run to. Jae-hwan was waiting behind his desk, 3 photographs laid out in a neat row. My stomach dropped before I even saw what they were. Sit, he said. I remained standing. His eyes flicked up, dangerous. I won't ask twice, Omega. I sat. The chair felt like a witness stand. He pushed the first photograph toward me. Sunshine Omega Shelter. Hongdae District. They have a reputation for helping unregistered Omegas disappear. His finger tapped the image. A nondescript building I'd stood in front of 5 years ago, 7 months pregnant and terrified. Their intake records show a gap in March 2020. 3 Omegas checked in that month. Only 2 checked out. My hands clenched in my lap. The third, he continued, his voice terrifyingly calm, was listed as transferred to secondary location. No name. No details. Very convenient. He pulled out another document, this one showing financial records. They received an anonymous donation of 50 million won the following week. Untraceable. Also very convenient. I don't know what you want me to say, I managed. I want you to tell me the truth. He pushed the second photograph forward. A man in his 60s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. My chest constricted. Dr. Yoon Sung-go, retired OB-GYN, runs a free clinic in Songbukdong. Arrested twice for providing unregistered medical care to Omegas. Charges dropped both times due to insufficient evidence. Jae-won's smile was cold. He delivered my son, didn't he? I couldn't breathe. Dr. Yoon had held my hand through labor, had whispered encouragement when I thought I'd die from the pain. He'd refused payment, had just pressed a card into my palm with a phone number and said, Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. Answer me, Muru. You can't, my voice cracked. You can't hurt him. He's just an old man who helps people. I can do whatever I want. He said it simply, factually. I can have his clinic shut down. I can have his medical license permanently revoked. I can make sure he never treats another patient again. He leaned forward. Or you can tell me the truth, and I'll consider leaving him alone. Consider? The word tasted like ash. I'm not making promises. His hand moved to the third photograph, and my blood turned to ice. It was a woman, late 20s, sharp eyes, wearing a leather jacket. Park So-mi, the forger who'd created Junseo's false birth certificate, who'd given me documents good enough to pass official scrutiny. This one's interesting, Jae-hwan said. Park So-mi. She specializes in identity fabrication. Very good at her job. I've used her services myself on occasion. His finger traced the edge of the photo. She's currently working out of Itaewon. Lives alone. No family to speak of. Very vulnerable. The threat was explicit now. I could see it in his eyes, the cold calculation, the willingness to destroy anyone who'd helped me escape his control. What do you want? The question came out broken. Names. He spread his hands over the photographs like a dealer showing cards. Everyone who helped you. The shelter worker who processed your intake. The doctor who delivered my son off the books. The forger who created those documents. Anyone who gave you money, suppressants, a place to stay. His eyes locked on mine. Give me the network, Muro. Every link in the chain that helped you steal 5 years of my son's life from me. And if I do? My hands were shaking. You'll destroy them anyway. Probably. His honesty was brutal. But if you don't, I'll do it slowly. Methodically. I'll dismantle every Omega shelter in this city until I find the right one. I'll investigate every retired doctor who's ever treated an unregistered patient. I'll hunt down every forger, every sympathetic social worker, every good Samaritan who thought they were helping. He stood, moving around the desk. Or you can give me what I want, and I'll make it quick. Clean. Surgical. They saved me, I whispered. They saved us. They helped you commit fraud. He crouched in front of me, his hands on my knees. They helped you falsify legal documents. They helped you hide my child from me. Those are crimes, Omega. Serious ones. You would have locked me away. The words burst out. You would have kept me in a cage just like this one. Yes. His grip tightened. I would have. I will. But at least you would have been safe. At least our son would have grown up with everything instead of nothing. His thumb pressed against my inner knee, burning through the thin fabric of my pants. At least I wouldn't have spent 5 years feeling you suffer through a bond you were too stubborn to let die. I thought of Dr. Yoon's gentle hands. Somi's quick smile when she'd handed me the forged documents and said, "Good luck, Mama. You're braver than you think." The shelter worker, her name was Minji, who'd snuck me extra food and helped me find the clinic. They'd risked everything for me. For us. I need time, I said desperately. Please. Just time to think. You have until tonight. Jaehwan stood, dismissing me with a gesture. Dinner is at 7. Bring me names, Miru, or I start with the shelter. I hear they're up for license renewal next month. Would be a shame if violations were discovered. I walked back to my room on numb legs, past Junseo playing with his new toys in the living room, his laughter echoing through the penthouse like a bell. In my bathroom, I stared at my reflection and tried to figure out how to save people who'd saved me without damning myself in the process. The mirror had no answers. Only my own haunted eyes staring back, trapped in a gilded cage with bars made of other people's safety. The call came at 2:47 p.m. I was folding laundry, expensive clothes I hadn't bought, for a child I was watching slip further away from me, when Jaewon's phone buzzed. He'd been working from the penthouse all week, ever since I'd given him 3 names and hated myself for it. He answered on the first ring. I watched the color drain from his face. Where? His voice was ice. A pause. How many? Another pause, and then something deadly calm settled over his features. Lock it down. Nobody in or out. I'm on my way. He was moving before the call ended, pulling a gun from a drawer I hadn't known existed. The weapon looked natural in his hand, like an extension of his body. What's wrong? My voice came out thin. Junseo's school. He was already at the door. Stay here. Like hell. I dropped the laundry and ran after him. If something's wrong, if he's in danger. He spun on me, and the expression on his face stopped me cold. There's a situation. My men are handling it. You stay here where it's safe. He's my son. Exactly. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. Which is why you don't go anywhere near an active threat. I can't protect you both. The elevator doors opened. He pushed me inside, pressed his palm to the scanner for the parking garage, and we descended in terrible silence. The drive to the school took 8 minutes. It should have taken 20, but Jaehwan drove like traffic laws were suggestions, the Genesis weaving through gaps that barely existed. I gripped the door handle and tried not to think about what situation meant. The preschool was in an old hanok that had been renovated into something impossibly expensive. Traditional architecture married to modern security. I'd hated it on sight when Jaehwan enrolled Junseo there without asking me. Now I could see why he'd chosen it. Stone walls, single entrance, guards disguised as gardeners. 3 black SUVs were parked outside, blocking the street. Men in suits I recognized as Jaehwan's spread around the perimeter. Kong met us at the entrance, his expression grim. Status, Jaehwan demanded. 2 hostiles breached the east wall. They got as far as the courtyard before we intercepted. Kang's jaw tightened. The children are in the safe room. Junseo's fine. But the hostels? Are they talking? Not yet. Good. Jaehwan started forward, then looked back at me. Miru, stay with Kong. I ignored him, following into the building. The hallway was pristine except for a smear of blood on the traditional paper door. My stomach lurched. The courtyard was worse. 2 men were on their knees, hands zip-tied behind their backs. One had blood streaming from his nose. The other's arm hung at an unnatural angle. 3 more of Jaehwan's men surrounded them, guns drawn but lowered. Who sent you? Jaehwan's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. The man with the broken arm spat blood. Fuck you. Jaehwan nodded to one of his men. The crack of breaking bone was sickeningly loud. The man's scream echoed off the Hannock's wooden beams. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tasting bile. I'll ask again. Jaehwan crouched in front of the screaming man, perfectly calm. Who sent you? Park's crew? The Chinese? Russian bratva. Go to hell. Another gesture. Another crack. This time it was a knee. The man collapsed, sobbing. You came to kill children, Jaehwan said, his voice still eerily pleasant. You came to my son's school with guns, and you're surprised when I break your bones? He stood, pulling his own weapon. Last chance. Who sent you? Park Min-sik, the other man gasped. Blood bubbled at his lips. He wanted to send a message. About the docks. Ah! Jaehwan's smile was terrible. That makes sense. Min-sik always was dramatic. He raised the gun. Jaehwan, I didn't know what I was going to say. Don't. Please. Not in front of me. He didn't look at me. 2 shots, precise and efficient. Both men crumpled. The silence that followed was absolute. I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears, couldn't process what I'd just witnessed. Jaehwan holstered his weapon and turned to Kong. Clean this up. Then burn Park Min-sik's operations to the ground. Every warehouse, every front, every safe house. I want him to understand what happens when you threaten my family. Yes, sir. And double the security detail on the school. Guards inside and out. I want eyes on my son every second he's here. Only then did he look at me. His expression was unreadable, but there was blood spatter on his shirt collar. Tiny red dots against pristine white. Where's Junseo? My voice sounded distant, not mine. Safe room. Come. He led me through the building to a reinforced door. The code he entered was 16 digits long. Inside, children sat in a circle with their teachers, playing a game with cards. Normal. Peaceful. Like there weren't 2 dead men bleeding out in the courtyard. Junseo looked up when I entered. Appa, are you here for early pickup? I couldn't speak. Just dropped to my knees and pulled him into my arms, breathing in his scent, milk and soap and innocence. The bad men are gone, Jaehwan said softly, addressing the room. Everyone is safe now. The teachers looked relieved. Grateful. Like he was a hero instead of a killer. In the car going home, Junseo chattered about his day, oblivious. Jaehwan drove normally now, one hand on the wheel. The blood on his collar had dried to rust. You killed them, I said quietly, once Junseo had dozed off in his car seat. Yes. Just like that. Without hesitation. They came to hurt our son. He glanced at me, and his eyes were flat. Empty. I'd kill 1,000 men before I let anyone touch him. You understand that now, don't you? I did. God help me, I did. Because when I'd seen those men in the courtyard, when I'd understood they'd come with guns to a school full of children, I'd wanted them dead too. I'd wanted Jaehwan to do exactly what he'd done. This is your world, I whispered. This is what you wanted me to bring him into. No. His hand found mine across the console. This is the world we live in, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. The only difference is, in my world, I can protect him. In yours, you were one lucky break away from losing him to someone like Park Min-sik. His fingers tightened. I may be a monster, Miru, but I'm the monster who keeps our son alive. I looked back at Junseo, sleeping peacefully, and knew with terrible certainty that Jaehwan was right. The violence I'd run from was the only thing standing between my son and a grave. I woke up burning. Not fever, I knew fever. This was different, deeper, a heat that started in my core and radiated outward until my skin felt too tight. I kicked off the covers and immediately regretted it, the cool air making me shiver despite the fire in my veins. No, not now. Not here. I hadn't had a heat cycle in 5 years. The suppressants had destroyed my body's natural rhythms, turning my heats into something irregular and broken. I'd thought, hoped, that maybe they were gone entirely, that I'd poisoned that part of myself beyond repair. My body had other plans. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers and tell me where you're watching from. I stumbled to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. Flushed cheeks, dilated pupils, the faint sheen of sweat on my collarbone. Preheat. I had maybe 24 hours before it hit fully, and I was trapped in a penthouse with an alpha whose pheromones I could smell even through closed doors. The shower helped for 10 minutes. Then the heat came back, worse now, accompanied by a hollow ache low in my belly. I pressed my forehead against the cool tile and tried to think through the haze. I needed suppressants. Emergency heat blockers. Something. Anything. But Jaehwan had burned my suppressants. And he controlled every exit. The breakfast table felt like a battlefield. Junseo sat between us, babbling about a picture he'd drawn in his new art class. I couldn't focus on his words. Every breath brought Jaehwan's scent, cedar and gunpowder, and something darker that made my hindbrain whine with recognition. Alpha. Mate. Home. I gripped my fork hard enough to hurt. Jaehwan's eyes tracked the movement. He'd been watching me since I'd entered the room, his gaze sharp and assessing. He knew. Of course he knew. Alphas could always tell. You're not eating, he observed. Not hungry. The fruit on my plate looked obscene. Too ripe. Too soft. Everything felt sexual suddenly, my body rewiring innocent things into invitations. Appa doesn't look good, Junseo said, frowning at me. Are you sick? Just tired, baby. I forced a smile. I'm fine. Jaehwan dismissed Junseo to play after breakfast. The moment our son was out of earshot, he leaned back in his chair and said simply, When? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence, Omega. His voice dropped into that register that made my spine arch involuntarily. You're in preheat. I can smell it. When's the last time you had a proper cycle? 5 years. The admission felt like defeat. The suppressants. Destroyed your endocrine system. Yes, I know. He stood, moving around the table with predatory grace. Heat suppressants aren't meant for long-term use. You were poisoning yourself month after month, and now your body's trying to correct the damage. He stopped behind my chair, close enough that I could feel his heat. This is going to be bad, Miru. Worse than a normal heat because your system's been dormant so long. I knew. God, I knew. I could already feel it building, the empty ache that would become desperate need, the fever that would burn rational thought to ash. I need blockers, I managed. Emergency suppressants. Something. No. His hand settled on my shoulder, and the touch sent electricity down my spine. You're not putting more chemicals in your body. You're going to ride this out naturally. I can't. Panic clawed up my throat. Not here. Not with you. Especially with me. His thumb brushed the scent gland on my neck, and I gasped. I'm your bonded alpha, Miru. Your body knows it even if you don't want to admit it. Fighting the heat will only make it worse. Get away from me. I tried to stand, but my legs were shaking. He let me go, stepping back with visible effort. I'll have the nest room prepared. Food, water, everything you'll need. You can lock yourself in if you want. And you? The question came out breathless. I'll stay as far away as you ask me to. His eyes were dark, pupils blown wide. But understand this. Every instinct I have is going to be screaming at me to break down that door. To give you what your body's begging for. My control is good, Omega, but it's not infinite. The day crawled by in agony. I tried to distract myself with Junseo, but every movement felt wrong. My clothes were too rough against sensitized skin. The air was too thick. I kept catching myself staring at Jaehwan across rooms, tracking the way he moved, the flex of his hands, the strong column of his throat. Dinner was a mistake. Jaehwan had insisted on eating together. Family dinner, he called it, like we were normal. Like I wasn't slowly coming apart at the seams. The food tasted like ash. I pushed it around my plate while Junseo talked about his day, while Jaehwan responded with patient attention, while the tension stretched tighter and tighter. Junseo. Jaehwan's voice was strained. It's time for bed. But I'm not tired. Now. The alpha command leaked through. Junseo's eyes widened, but he went without further protest. The silence after he left was suffocating. You're in active heat, Jaehwan said. He hadn't moved from his seat, but his knuckles were white around his fork. It's starting. I could feel it, the shift from uncomfortable to unbearable, the way my body was opening, preparing, calling. Slick was starting to gather, hot and mortifying. My scent was changing, sweetening, screaming availability to any alpha in range. Thankfully, there was only one. I'm going to my room. I stood on trembling legs. Miru. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were molten. The careful control he'd maintained for weeks was cracking, fissures spreading across his composure. If you need me, I won't. Your body will. He stood slowly, like moving too fast would shatter his restraint. I can wait, Omega. I've waited 5 years. I can wait through this too. He crossed to me, stopping just close enough that I could feel his heat. But your body remembers who you belong to. And when the fever gets bad, when the pain becomes unbearable, you'll call for me. Never. The word was a whimper. His hand cupped my face with devastating gentleness. We'll see. I fled to my room and locked the door, then immediately dragged every blanket I could find into the closet. Nest. I needed to nest. My hands moved on instinct, arranging fabric into a den, a safe space, except nothing felt safe because Jaewon's scent was everywhere, on the sheets, in the air, embedded in the walls. The heat hit fully at midnight. I bit down on a pillow to muffle my sounds, writhing in the nest I'd built, burning from the inside out. And God help me, I wanted to call for him. Wanted to unlock that door and let my alpha make the pain stop. Instead, I buried my face in his pillowcase and sobbed. The heat broke on the third day. I woke up in my destroyed nest, covered in sweat and shame, my body aching in ways that had nothing to do with fever. I'd survived it alone. Barely. There were scratches on the door from the inside where I'd clawed at it, delirious, before crawling back to my nest and riding out the worst of it. I'd never called for him. Small victory. Hollow victory. Jaehwan found me in the shower an hour later, still trying to scrub away the feeling of my own skin. He didn't knock, just walked in like he had every right. Get out, I said, but there was no strength behind it. You need to eat. He set a tray on the counter, broth, rice, fruit. Food for someone recovering. And then we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. That's fine. I'll do the talking. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Even exhausted and wrung out, I couldn't help noticing the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders. Hated myself for noticing. Get dressed. My office. 20 minutes. He was gone before I could argue. The contract was waiting on his desk when I arrived. Thick paper, expensive weight, bound in leather. Legal language I could barely parse, swimming across pages and pages of terms and conditions. Sit, Jaehwan said. I sat, looked at the contract. Didn't touch it. We've been dancing around this for weeks, he began, his tone businesslike. Clinical. It's time to formalize the situation. You have two options, Miru, and I need you to choose. I don't want either option. Nevertheless, he opened the contract to the first page. Option 1. You accept your role as my bonded mate. We complete the mating bond properly, a claiming bite, registered and witnessed. We marry legally, which legitimizes Junseo as my heir and affords you certain protections under both Korean law and my organization's bylaws. His finger traced down the page. You would have access to my accounts, legal authority over Junseo's education and medical care, and a seat at the table for family decisions. In exchange for what? I already knew. Still needed to hear him say it. Your freedom. He said it simply. You belong to me completely. No more running. No more hiding. You accept the bond, accept your place in my world, and raise our son as part of this family. The words should have horrified me. Instead, they just felt inevitable. And option 2? His smile was cold. You remain a guest. Indefinitely. You stay in this penthouse, you have access to Junseo, but you have no legal rights. No authority. No protections. He flipped to a different section of the contract. I control everything, where you go, who you see, what you do. The bond stays incomplete. You stay unmated. And Junseo, he paused. Junseo grows up watching his Omega parent live as a beautiful prisoner with no power and no status. That's not a choice. That's coercion. That's reality. He leaned back in his chair. I've given you weeks, Miru. Weeks to adjust, to see that this life isn't the nightmare you imagined. Junseo is thriving. You're safe. And despite everything, we both know the bond is still there. His eyes locked on mine. Your heat proved that. You could have called for me. Should have called for me. The fact that you didn't means you have more strength than I gave you credit for. But it also means you're still fighting a battle you've already lost. I wanted to argue. Wanted to throw the contract in his face and tell him to go to hell. But he was right about all of it. The bond was still there, wounded but alive. Junseo was happy in ways I'd never been able to make him. And I was so tired of fighting. What does completing the bond actually mean? My voice was smaller than I wanted it to be. A claiming bite during your next heat. His tone softened slightly. Properly done this time, not the botched mark from before. It will fully establish the mate bond, make it permanent and irreversible. Your heats will sink to my presence. You'll be able to feel my emotions through the bond the way I feel yours. And, his jaw tightened, it will mark you as mine in a way that every alpha in this city will recognize and respect. So I become property. You become protected. He stood, moving around the desk. Do you know what happens to unmated omegas in my world, Maru? They're vulnerabilities. Targets. Tools to be used against the alphas who care about them. He crouched in front of my chair. But a claimed bonded mate? That's sacred. Inviolable. Anyone who touches you would be declaring war on me and everything I control. You're asking me to give up everything I am. I'm asking you to accept what you already are. His hand found mine. You're the Omega who carried my child, who raised my son in poverty rather than surrender your pride, who survived 5 years on suppressants that should have killed you, who endured a heat alone rather than admit you needed me. His grip tightened. You're already the strongest person I know, Maru. This doesn't change that. It just makes it official. I looked down at the contract, at the pages of legal text that would bind me to him forever. And if I choose option 2? If I refuse the bond, then you stay exactly as you are. A guest in my home, the mother of my child, but never my equal, never my partner. His voice went hard. And when Juncio asks why his Omega parent has no voice in family decisions, why you're not at important events, why you live in this penthouse but aren't really part of the family, what will you tell him? The cruelty of it stole my breath. He was using our son as leverage, using my love for Juncio as a weapon. I hate you, I whispered. Again. Always. Sign the contract, Maru. He placed a pen in my hand. Stop fighting. Stop running. Just surrender. I stared at the pen, at my hand holding it, at the signature line waiting at the bottom of page 43. This was agency, I told myself. Choosing my prison instead of having it chosen for me. Claiming what power I could in a situation designed to strip it away. This was survival. I signed my name in shaking script, Han Miru. Jaewon's smile was terrible and triumphant as he countersigned below mine. Co Jaewon. Your next heat, he said softly, taking the contract. I'll complete the bond. Until then, he pulled me to my feet, his hand cupping the back of my neck. Welcome to the family, Omega. Officially. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered with indifferent beauty, and I wondered if this was what freedom felt like when you'd forgotten what it tasted like. My next heat came 6 weeks later. This time, I didn't lock the door. Jaehwan found me in the nest I'd built in his bedroom. Our bedroom now, though I still thought of it as his. The fever was already burning through me, turning thought into instinct, replacing fear with desperate need. Miro. His voice was strained. He'd been preparing for this, I knew. Had cleared his schedule, stationed guards, made sure Juncio was safely with his grandmother for the week. Everything controlled. Everything planned. Please. I didn't know what I was begging for. Everything. Nothing. An end to the burning. He came to me slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal. His hands were gentle as he gathered me close, his scent washing over me in waves. Cedar. Gunpowder. Alpha. Mine. I'm going to claim you, he murmured against my temple. Properly this time. The way I should have 5 years ago. His lips brushed my scent gland, and I shuddered. Tell me you understand. I understand. My fingers clawed at his shirt, trying to get closer. The bond between us was singing, incomplete but desperate for wholeness. Do it, please. The claiming bite, when it came, was both agony and relief. His teeth sank into my scent gland as he moved inside me, and the bond snapped into place with devastating finality. I felt it lock, that phantom chain I'd tried so hard to sever, now forged in steel and sealed in blood. His emotions flooded through me, possessive love, fierce protectiveness, and underneath it all, a grief so deep it made me sob. Mine, he growled against my throat. Say it. Yours. The word was surrender and acceptance and truth. I'm yours. The heat lasted 3 days. When it finally broke, I woke up in our nest with his arm around my waist and a permanent mark on my neck. The bond hummed between us, complete and unbreakable. I could feel him even before I opened my eyes, his satisfaction, his contentment, the bone-deep possessiveness that would never fade. How do you feel? His voice was rough from sleep and other things. Different. I touched the claiming mark, feeling the raised scar tissue. It would never fully heal. Would always be visible. A brand. A promise. I can feel you. I know. His hand covered mine over the mark. I've felt you for 5 years. Now we're even. The registry office was small, private, witnessed only by Jaewon's lawyer and Kong. I wore a suit Jaewon had chosen, charcoal gray, expensive, fitted perfectly. He wore black. We signed papers that made me Co Maru legally, that legitimized Junseo as the acknowledged heir to the Seo family fortune and organization. You may kiss, the officiant said, and Jaehwan did, claiming my mouth with the same certainty he'd claimed everything else. When we picked up Junseo from his grandmother's house, our son threw himself into my arms. Appa, you smell different. Do I? I buried my nose in his hair, breathing him in. You smell like Daddy now. He pulled back, studying the mark on my neck with wide eyes. Did that hurt? Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. Yes, I said honestly. But it's better now. Jaehwan ruffled Junseo's hair, his other hand resting on my lower back. Possessive. Protective. It means we're a real family now. All of us together. Forever. Junseo asked. Forever, Jaehwan confirmed. I felt the truth of it through the bond. His absolute certainty, his unshakable possession. Forever. There would be no escape now. No running. No freedom. Only this. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm I hadn't expected. I learned the names of Jaehwan's men, the structure of his organization, the delicate politics of his world. He included me in decisions about Junseo's education, about household matters, about which social events we'd attend as a family. Not business. He kept that separate, but enough that I felt less like a prisoner and more like a partner. I also learned how to shape the shadows. When Junseo asked why his father's men carried guns, I told him the truth. Because the world is dangerous, and sometimes protecting the people you love means being dangerous too. But strength isn't just about violence. It's also about knowing when not to use it. When he noticed that some of his friends Omega's parents seemed scared of their alphas, I taught him. Being Omega doesn't mean being weak. Your Appa is Omega, and I survived 5 years protecting you alone. Don't confuse submission with powerlessness. And when he found me crying one night, missing the freedom I'd never have again, I held him close and whispered. Sometimes we make choices that hurt, but we make them because we love someone more than we love ourselves. That's a different kind of strength. Jaehwan watched these lessons from doorways, from across rooms, through the bond that connected us. I felt his approval, his respect, his love, twisted and possessive as it was. One evening, I found them in the library. Junseo was curled in Jaehwan's lap, an advanced reading book open between them. Our son was sounding out words carefully while his father guided him with patient encouragement. The lamp cast golden light over them both, turning the scene domestic. Almost normal. Jaehwan looked up, and our eyes met. Through the bond, I felt his contentment, his pride in our son, his satisfaction at having us both here safe his. And I thought, this darkness has become our twisted version of home. I crossed the room and settled beside them, adding my voice to the lesson. Junseo beamed between his two fathers, loved and protected and completely unaware of the cage built around him with bars made of devotion. Outside, Seoul glittered with dangerous beauty, and inside we built our dynasty in shadows, bound by blood and choice and a bond that would never break. This was my life now. Not the one I'd wanted, not the one I'd fought for, but mine nonetheless.